Have you ever just been high and chilling and eventually your mouth just dries out like the frickin' desert? Like you're SpongeBob and Patrick hanging out with Sandy in her little bubble under the ocean, and all you need is a little bit of water. Cottonmouth is one of those wild things that at least everybody who smokes experiences probably once or more in their life. Your mouth just dries out while you're smoking and getting high. And it's a really interesting thing because there's a couple of things that are going on when you get cottonmouth, and there's some ways that you can actually avoid it. And I personally almost never get cottonmouth. I used to have this issue back in the day, but at a certain point, you just become a hydrated human being and you don't get weird things like cottonmouth anymore. Well, this is something somebody asked me on my Twitch stream the other day, and I've been meaning to make a video about cottonmouth for a while because there's a few things that are happening, and it's really interesting when you hear what's going down with cottonmouth. Are you good, bud? Okay, he's good. So one thing that happens when you get cottonmouth is you're inhaling smoke into your mouth. That dries out your mouth. The smoke is hot. It's really dry. I've taken hits, even though I sipped before I ripped. The smoke really can just dry your mouth out so quickly. But that's not the actual cause of cottonmouth. That's just one of the factors. Just a big old fat inhale of smoke is going to ruin that last bit of moisture in your mouth. But another interesting thing is that there's CB1 and CB2 cannabinoid receptors in your submandibular gland, which is responsible for producing 70% of your saliva. And when you smoke, cannabinoids bind to the CB1 and CB2 receptors in your submandibular gland, and eventually it stops receiving messages from your nervous system that you need to produce saliva there. So the guy responsible for producing most of your saliva is just taking a vacation. He's taking a smoke break when you get high, and he's not making you spit anymore. So there's actually something that's happening in your body that's going to reduce the amount of saliva that you're producing. You're not just drying your mouth out with smoke. It's really interesting when you think about it, but I almost never get cottonmouth. I used to get cottonmouth a lot, but I almost never get it now. And I think the biggest thing is that I drink so much water now, and I drink almost nothing else. Some days I have a small glass of orange juice, I'll mix it in there. Sometimes coffee here and there, but sometimes I go the whole week, I didn't have anything but water. And I drink a lot of water. I drink when I smoke. I obviously talk about sip before you rip. I have a whole video on it. Sipping before you rip, I think, helps prepare you for that hot smoke that would otherwise dry out your mouth if you didn't have a lot of moisture in there. But it also helps you combat that lower saliva production that you're going to be dealing with. If your body's not producing as much saliva, you don't have like this protective barrier on the inside of your throat that's going to prepare you for taking a big old smoke hit. A dry mouth is like a quick way to cough. If you're dried out, you're not going to be able to take as big of hits, or the hits are just going to be much more likely to make you cough. So I drink a lot of water. I drink about 5 or 6 of these glasses a day, maybe more. This jar holds like 2.5 cups of water. I drink it several times a day, a few times before my stream starts, but I do most of my smoking live on Twitch from about 9 p.m. Eastern to about 1 or 2 a.m. Eastern. I do most of my smoking there, and I actually drink a lot more water in that time period. And part of it's combating taking big old smoke hits that would otherwise dry my mouth out. But also part of it is to make up for that lowered saliva production. I actually have sip police in my chat because I've talked about sip before you rip. If people suspect that I didn't sip before my rip, they'll let me know about it. They're almost wrong 99% of the time. Like, I usually sip and they just didn't see the sip, and then they're like, oh my God, you didn't sip. But towards the end of my smoke sesh, I talk about sip before you rip, but towards the end of my smoke sesh, after I've been smoking for a few hours, I don't need the sip anymore. So I would assume I would have a lower saliva production at that point in my smoke sesh. But I've drank so much water to compensate. I probably doubled my water intake after a couple hours of smoking for the entire day, that I'm just hydrated. Like, hydration is the key if you don't want to cough from your hits and if you don't want cottonmouth. If you're properly hydrated, you're most likely not going to have an issue with cottonmouth. Now, I would say in the beginning of my smoke sesh, before I really got into it, I probably couldn't do 3 or 4 bong rips in a row without needing to cough or needing to stop. But later in the smoke sesh, after I'm decently hydrated to compensate for all the smoking that I'm doing, I feel like I could do like 10, 20 hits in a row without any sort of coughing. That's after my CB receptors supposedly have slowed down their saliva production. But I feel like a sufficient hydration level compensates for any reduced saliva production. So if you're drinking a lot of soda, you're drinking a lot of sugary drinks, those don't hydrate you. Soda doesn't hydrate you. Drink more water. Drink less things that would take away from your hydration. Coffee's a diuretic. That's going to dry you out. Nicotine actually causes your mouth to dry out. So blunt smokers are hitting themselves with a double whammy when it comes to Cottonmouth. Anyway, I hope I didn't ramble on too long. Sip before you rip is really big for me. Helps you combat the smoke and helps you combat that lowered saliva production. And hydration is a good weapon against Cottonmouth. If you're hydrated, it's not going to be as big of an issue for you. I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to check out my smoke sessions. I go live on Twitch after 9 p.m. Eastern every night. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can give me Jeff Bezos money without spending anything. Twitch Prime, baby. And if you don't know about Sip Before You Rip already, check out this video. This is probably my #1 piece of advice for people trying to get high. Later, my dudes.